What up, homies? I've got a few chess videos now that break down how the pieces move, how to avoid blunders, and how to set up the board, but I haven't actually shared what openings I use yet. Today I'd like to change that, so I'll be sharing with you all what openings I use when I'm playing as white. Make sure to drop a subscribe if you find this to your enjoyment, because every week I drop a new gaming video, and I'd love to have you around for them. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Alright, starting right at the beginning, I like to open up with e4, the king's pawn opening. Objectively speaking, d4 is more popular at the highest levels of the game and has a better win rate than e4. But my experiences have been that e4 tends to lead to sharp, tactical gameplay, while d4 tends to lead to solid, positional gameplay. Since I'm stronger tactically and I love traps, I go with e4. The most popular responses to this are e5, the king's pawn game, c5, the Sicilian Defense, e6, the French Defense, and c6, the Caro-Kann Defense, or Caro-Kann Defense. There are others such as d6, the Perk Defense, b6 or g6 to fianchetto a bishop early, as well as moving a knight out to enter the Alekhine or the Nimzowitsch defenses, but these are less common, and if I went into every possible move, this video would be hours long, so I'm just going to get into the four most popular responses for now. If you'd like to see how I play things like the Alekhine or the Perk as white, please let me know by dropping a comment as well as booping that like button so I'm encouraged to make more videos on my preferred chess openings. With these four most popular openings, and just for a recap, that was the King's Pawn game, the French, the Sicilian, and the Caro-Kann, I'm going to start by talking about the Caro-Kann first because it involves the least concrete, least theoretical strategy on my part. When I see c6 as a response to my e4, I quickly play the ridiculous looking h4. So not gonna lie, this is kind of a dumb approach to beating the Caro-Kann and it should not work. It shouldn't work. The thing is, people playing the Caro-Kann often tend to follow a very specific set of moves. Usually, the beginning of a Caro-Kann goes like this: e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, bishop to f5, and then white can make all kinds of minor piece moves such as the knights or this bishop, and then black is going to play e6. Now if they don't realize a trap is lurking when I play h4 and they follow their normal move order, they're going to lose a bishop. I don't know what the deal is, maybe this is an issue people stop having at a higher rating, but nobody ever sees this trap coming. So after I play h4, the typical response that I get is d5 like normal, and I play e5. They play out the bishop to f5 as usual, I protect my e5 pawn with d4, and they play e6, and then I cackle maniacally, and I play g4. Goodbye bishop. No matter where this bishop goes, it's getting snatched up, and for not much material compensation. Next up is my response to the Sicilian Defense. The Sicilian is very popular, and is reputed as one of the best responses for black to use if they want a sharp, aggressive counterattack. The Sicilian is also highly theoretical, which means the people that play it have usually spent time studying different variations, and they're more prepared than me if we follow common move orders. To avoid these, and to fit my aggressive, crash-through playstyle, I usually play an opening called the Grand Prix attack, which can be reached after playing knight to c3, and after they respond with pretty much anything other than g6, we can play our pawn to f4. If you're wondering about that g6 move, or you simply want to learn the Grand Prix attack, I've put a link in the description to a video that discusses the Grand Prix in depth. This variation catches a lot of opponents off guard because it isn't quite as common as some open Sicilian variations, and the pawn structure tends to come out looking a lot different as the game progresses. A sample line might be e4, c5, knight c3, knight c6, f4, d6, knight f3, knight f6, and bishop to c4 preparing the castle. My other favorite response to the Sicilian is a pet opening of mine that performs surprisingly well in club level games, but is pretty much guaranteed to lose at the championship level, and that would be the Sicilian Brick. Now let's discuss what I do when my opponent plays the French Defense. Like the Sicilian, the French is very popular and gives fantastic chances to the black player. However, while the Sicilian tends to stab into white territory like a defense and an attack at the same time, the French can sometimes be so positionally solid that the white player may find themselves with nothing to fight for and almost no tactics to employ. I don't want my opponent to become an impenetrable fortress, so I interrupt the plan early with an opening known as the two knights attack, which can be reached after e4, e6, knight to c3, d5 usually gets played, and then knight to f3. So I really like this opening because it kind of just sucks to play as black. Like, even if you play well as black, white gets to have all the fun and all the attacking opportunities with traps all over the place. Usually black will do one of four moves in this position. The first of these is to push the pawn to d4 and attack the knight, thinking the pawn is protected by the queen. However, white can just drop the knight to e2 for a double attack on the pawn. Black now has to defend the overextended pawn, usually with c5 because they don't want to block the c pawn when they move their knight to c6, but we can attack it again with c3. Now they can trade pawns if they want to, but they usually don't want to give up a center pawn for a flank pawn, so they'll either try pushing it forward to attack the knight again, or try protecting it again with knight to c6. If they push the pawn again, we have knight to f4 for another double attack, and if they protect with the c pawn again at that point, we have queen to h4 and we get the c pawn for free after they block the check. The d pawn will fall soon as well. If they protect with the knight, we can trade these pawns, and then play queen to h4, and their only move to hold on to the pawn is bishop to c5, which leads to an awful position, and honestly, you're probably going to win the pawn anyways. Another common move here is to just trade the pawns, and then trade these knights as well. But after d4, black just doesn't really have anything to do, while white has an aggressive setup after something like bishop to d3 and castling. The other common moves from the start of the two knights attack are to play c5, which actually falls into a trap and turns into a complete mess for black as well, and to play knight to f6, which is in fact the main line. Even then, black usually ends up in a terrible position and sometimes an early checkmate. If you're wondering about the c5 trap, I've put a link in the description to a video showing exactly why it falls apart, and I've also put another video link that goes over the main line. And now for my favorite response from black, the king's pawn game. As soon as I see this, I perk up, because all of my favorite openings as white start right here. From here, I'm gonna play bishop to c4. Most of the time, the opponent plays either knight to c6, knight to f6, or bishop to c5, but they do sometimes play the Philidor defense with pawn to d6. I'm not going to go into too much detail on my response to the Philidor, but basically I use the central attack with some special FDG spices included, and I've put another link in the description for anyone interested in learning it. No, the link does not give you my secret spices. Against knight to c6, I play knight to f3, transposing to the Italian. From here, I try to get either a Max Lang attack or a Morphy's Gambit attack. If you guys want to see me do videos specifically on any of these openings, leave a comment down below or fill out the form at the bottom of the description to make requests. If they play bishop to c5, I still play knight to f3, and I try to transpose to either the Max Lang attack or the Italian Gambit. I've saved my very favorite opening for last though, which comes after they play knight to f6. We gambit the pawn with d4, and then when they take, we gambit another pawn with knight to f3. If they take the second pawn, we take with our queen on d4 and enter the Urasov Gambit, my absolute favorite opening to play as white. I might make a video on the Urasov Gambit at some point in the future if it seems like people are wanting to see more chess content. Alright all, that pretty much covers my opening repertoire with the white pieces. I hope you enjoyed seeing a general overview of how my games usually start out, and depending on the comments people leave on this video, I might just have to do some detailed breakdowns of specific openings in the future, rather than giving a quick snapshot of my whole repertoire. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.